Hi everyone, welcome back for video 2. I've just finished my practice. I'm going to drink some tea. Thanks to all of you who watched and commented and got some good discussions going after the last video. I really appreciate it, so thank you. The first video of the 3 was entitled How to Finally Get Good At. I put Tai Chi or Kung Fu, but really it's anything, right? And of course the answer is practice. Everyone knows the answer is practice. However, how many people actually do it? That's the thing. We all know we should practice. And so some people have said to me, okay, yeah, so I got that, I got the first one. But here's the thing, and I was talking about things like habit tracking apps on phones and things like that. People have amassed several 100-day streaks, for example, on Duolingo of learning a foreign language, which is terrific. And again, I was suggesting the psychology of that and the way it works can be applied to anything. So my question is, if you practice Tai Chi, have you done your form every day for several 100 days without a break? Have you done that? And think of the difference it would make to your health, to your well-being, and of course to the quality of your practice. And the same thing with your Kung Fu, you know, or if you do MMA or whatever. Have you got a streak of practice where you're working on something consistently for several 100 days to really, really kind of get good at it? And we're talking about like the path to mastery, not just I'll do it occasionally and then you pretty well tread water or you stay on the same level. So how do we get really good? So that was the first video. Please, if you haven't seen that, please check that one out first, because I think it's the prerequisite for this one. I think before how to practice is how to establish a practice. So that was the first video. Today I'm going to talk about what makes a practice effective. And again, maybe it's not rocket science, it's not secret, but I'm trying to give people actionable steps. Like, how can we really do it? Last time I was talking about using apps. I'm going to do something similar today. I'm going to give you a few resources so you can actually, how do I make my practice effective? So, how do we define a practice? That's the first thing. Let's say my goal is to get really, really good at Tai Chi. I'm just using this as an example, but I'll give several examples as we go. And I say, I really want to master this particular form, and I've decided I'm going to do it every day and so on. Well, I could do the form every day, and that's not going to guarantee I get really good at it. I might just get better at doing what I'm doing now. That might be wrong, for example. I could get simply reinforcing certain habits, or if I misunderstand something, I just keep doing it the same way. So the old saying, if you always do what you've always done, then you'll always get what you've always got, rings true. Here's the problem. From this side of the discipline, from this side of the practice, we can't yet see what the end goal is. This is so important, because if you could see it, you'd already be there. Right? This is why after 40 years of training, I spent this summer with my Sifu, loads and loads of private lessons, and I'm, sorry, a little light glitch there, and I'm still going back to him and saying, give me some feedback, tell me where my practice needs to be going. Because it's very easy from the perspective you are now, especially if you're a beginner and you don't yet have much of a sight or a vision, and you think, oh yeah, I'm at this point. You don't actually know where you're at. It takes at least several months of like daily practice in order to start to see it. And so, one of my students in class last week sort of started to say, oh, I feel like I'm getting worse and worse at this form. And I was, congratulations, because what was happening was the student was actually becoming better and therefore could understand it better and therefore could spot more mistakes. It wasn't that she was making more mistakes, it was that she was noticing more mistakes. That is a massive step up, because when you notice, you know what you've got to practice. Then your practice will bear fruit. Let me give an example of driving a car. If practice makes perfect, then everyone that's been driving for 20 years will be a better driver than people who've been driving for 10 years, right? Twice as much practice should be twice as good. We all know it's not. Why? Because there's a type of practice that gets results, and it's called deliberate practice. If you are practicing with a specific intent to become a better driver, particularly if you're working with a coach and you were getting feedback and they were saying, okay, you do this, 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 and you're trying to improve it and you get better and better, and then, right, that's correct, we'll show you the next part, and it's a skill that's progressing, then for sure if you did that for 20 years, you'd be better than someone that did it for 10 years. Definitely, because think how much more experience, how much more hours of refinement that you've got. The thing is though, most people driving do it mindlessly, not mindfully. which means instead of it being a deliberate practice, it's just a muscle memory that's not being refined. So Kung Fu is about refinement, not just about learning. So how do we do that? And what if you don't have a coach? What if you're working by yourself, for example? How do we know we're getting better? How do we make the practice working towards something? So here's the first thing. You probably heard about goal setting and measurable progress and so on. This is all like utterly important, like really, really fundamental. If I'm lifting weights and I can lift this amount and my goal is to lift that amount, then I can measure. I know I can push 10 kilos and I want to be able to push 20 kilos, and I measure it, and then a few weeks later I test it. Oh, now I can do 12. Boom, I know I've progressed. So we have something measurable. Okay, that's the first thing. And then we need to know what's a realistic goal. So measurable is the first thing. Now, if you're practicing martial arts, whether it's Kung Fu or Tai Chi, there's certain things. For example, if you're doing Kung Fu, you need to work on your strength, your flexibility, your cardiovascular fitness, and your conditioning, i.e. the ability to mete out and withstand blows without getting injured, without hurting your hands or your feet. So we call that conditioning. So we have aerobic training or anaerobic training, conditioning of the body, mobility or flexibility training, strength, and strength is the basis for speed and power training, and so on. And so there's so many things. How do you know you're getting better? Well, with strength training, it's fairly easy. If you lift weights, you can measure it. Okay, with cardiovascular training, if you're running, you can use a running app, or you can measure your speed, your pace. You know when you're getting better. Okay, flexibility training, it's similar, but most people don't do that. So for example, if your goal is to touch your toes or to do the splits, let's say you're this far away, doesn't matter if it's splits or touching your toes, you're this far away. How do you know you're getting better? Well, here's what you do. You take a pile of books and you make it this high, and you go all the way down and you sit and you hold that position until it becomes comfortable. Then you take one book away. Now I'm having to work. After a while that becomes comfortable. I take one book away. So if I'm touching my toes, I can touch the top book. I take a book away. I can't quite. Oh, I can touch the next one. I take it away. And so you can then have your notes, and you can say, right, I can do a pile of 10 books, and then next week I've got 9, and then maybe the week after that 8. So again, it's measurable progress, but it's incremental. There's no good going, I want to touch my toes and I'm this far away, and then maybe I practice and I get this far, but I don't see progress because I just know I still can't do it. How can you measure it? So that's the first thing, measurable. So now we know how to measure flexibility. So that's an example, is I will use some kind of a touch point. Another thing you can use, which I use, is an angle. So on my phone I have an app that can measure angles, like you draw the line and you can come up with an angle. So for example, if your goal is splits or back bridge or whatever it is, you can draw it, you can see, say my splits is 136 degrees, and then with practice it's 137, 138 with the goal of 180. Can you see where I'm going? Like very small improvements. Then what you need to figure out, because this is an individual thing, is how often you have to do it, how hard you have to push, how many sets and reps you need to do, what tempo you need to do it at. There's so many variables. What I'm suggesting you do is take notes, try different things, write them down, see what works. Because if you can measure, you can say, well, this works better for me. This time I tried this many, I did 4 extra sets, the next day I was too tired, I was too stiff to stretch, whatever it is, and you note that down. And then gradually you will come to find what works for you. That's one option. So, let's say your goal is running or your cardiovascular endurance. Well, again, there's plenty of running apps. You can do one of these couch to 5K programs. If you can already run 5K, you might have how do I improve my times? You can have somebody who's a professional has written a program. You need to do it 3 times a week. You need to do this much intervals. You need to do a fast day, a distance day, whatever, and you follow the program. Same thing if your goal is to get stronger. There's plenty of apps. For example, there's one called Strong Lifts. If you've got a barbell and you say, my goal is to do 5 reps of 5, and then I can achieve that, and then it tells me next time, right, you achieved that, put an extra kilo on the bar or something. And so what the app is doing is tracking your progress, And people who are smart have already figured out the optimum frequency and duration of the workout. Now, okay, as you get more advanced, you need to be a little bit more personal, a little bit more sophisticated about it. However, these apps are great because they can take you from a complete novice to like 80% of the way there. And then we can argue about the last 20% and like refine it later. But you're already strong, you're already fit, you're already flexible. So you've done your stretching, you've done your cardio, you've done your strength training, okay? And then of course it's about the technique. So let's talk about, for example, if you're working a form now, on my online academy, and okay, this is a quick plug, what my students can do is just get their phone, record their form, send it to me, and I'm going to look at it and go, okay, here are the 3 things you need to work on this week, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, and I can tell them because of course I'm a little bit further along, I know what I'm looking at, I can spot things and I can say, okay, this, and then I will make a video where I'll put myself and them on the same screen and I'll say, look, your hand is here, it needs to be here, or whatever it is, you see, because it's to the individual. And then they can say, okay, and they've got actionable steps, which means, of course, when they practice, they know what they're working on. It's not just a mindless repetition, but I have specific things. My recommendation is 3 things. I always use 3 things because if I overload people with correction, it's like juggling too many balls. You know, it's too much to remember. 3 things though, you can refine it, you can think about it. It's enough to concentrate on, and you work on those for the entire week, and chances are you retain it. And then the next time I see the video, I can go, okay, those 3 things are fixed. Here's the next 3 things, and they're usually some finer detail or some kind of high level correction. So what about if you don't have a coach, or if you're not in my online academy, what do? Actually, one thing is useful is to record yourself. Now, people hate doing this. I tell my students to do this all the time. I suspect very few actually do because people don't like looking at themselves. But I'm not asking you to put it on YouTube or Facebook. I'm just saying get your phone, record your session, and then watch it after you finish. Well, you can delete it afterwards, but watch it. And sometimes it's a good idea, don't delete it, because when you look at it 3 or 4 weeks later and you go, wow, I've made progress before and after, right? Then you kind of wish you'd taken the photos before or the videos before, because you can see the progression. But if you're coming to class where you have some idea, say your goal in the Tai Chi is, how do I make this form smoother? How do I make it less jerky, more even tempo, for example? This is just, you know, off the top of my head, one thing. Then when you're watching the video, you can see, okay, if I'm looking at it with that idea and I can see, oh, there's a few bits here where I'm kind of losing the form a bit, or I'm having to stop and think, or maybe I'm speeding up, and then you can watch it and say, okay, I'll deliberately next time try to make that part smooth, and then re-record, and then you can gauge progress. So I hope you can see the point of what I'm saying. Everything has to be specific. A practice session has to have a goal. You're not just, oh, I just got to do the thing. No, I'm working on something very specific. Best case scenario, a coach has told you what to work on. Worst case scenario, you're using an app, or you've got some idea, or even you're just watching it yourself. You've got a video of some champion and you've got a video of yourself, and you're comparing the 2 things, and you know, you've got something. But don't over critique. 3 things is plenty. Okay, so there's some ideas about how to practice, like what makes a practice session. That's something else I'm talking about, the difference in training. Okay, so when you practice, how does it work? Well, there's 2 things. There's a neurological adaptation, and then there's the physiological adaptation. So what do I mean by that? Practice, say I'm practicing something like juggling, and I don't have the coordination, and I can't do it, and I can't figure it out, and I do it, and I drop the balls, and I do it again, and after a while my brain starts figuring it out, and these are the neurons get rewired, and eventually it's like, oh, and then the muscle memory is there, and then you can juggle, okay? So that's one. So the adaptive response is neural pathways develop, okay? Where if I'm lifting a weight, there's a bit more to it. Surely at the beginning, the neurological adaptations will cause a big strength increase, but then after that, there's actual physiological things happening. The stress on the muscle, there's like possibly micro traumas or things that need to be kind of repaired, and there's hypertrophy, and there's all various other things. To what degree, there's some speculation in the research about it, but the point being, you need several days to recover before you can do the same workout again. And I'm telling you about practicing every day, so there seems like there's a conflict there. And so here's what I'm now saying, what I'm trying to clarify, is that certain things you get better while you're adapting? Well, everything really. So for example, if it's juggling, believe it or not, it's probably while you're asleep and your brain's kind of processing that the adaptations are made, right? When you're lifting weights, again, it's when you're sleeping, the body's rebuilding, when you're resting. So if you're not getting good sleep, good rest, and good nutrition, the body can't adapt. Doesn't matter how hard you push it, if you can't build it back up, you don't make the progress. And the same thing with the neurological. If you can't calm the mind, if you don't have you stress and then you relax. So it's yin and yang, okay? So the more you can relax, so for example, some kind of, walking in nature, daily meditation practice, and some kind of calming and sleeping well, and all the kind of good practices, makes a huge difference to the effect of the practice, right? How the body adapts after a practice session. So these things can't be emphasized enough. People can do everything right, but they're going through kind of a stressful time, they're not sleeping so well, and their body's just I'm not getting more flexible, I'm not getting stronger. And I always look to the other things. If the training is dialed in, you have to look at the recovery. Okay. So some types of physiological recovery may even need 4 or 5 days. Right, some things, especially I'm not as young as I once was, there's certain practices that I only do every maybe 4 days. And the reason being that my body needs that amount of time to recover. Now, it doesn't mean I don't practice for 4 days, it means I cycle my training. So if one muscle group needs a rest, I'm training a different muscle group, okay? Or if my upper body flexibility has been pushed hard one day, the next day I'll be doing lower body. So there is an idea of how to plan it, which would be actually that will be my third video. So how you can plan a week, especially if you have kind of multiple goals and what you want to do. But what I want to say for this video is that it's not just the practice session, it's the recovery. Some exercises maybe need several days recovery, some don't. So for example, the Tai Chi form, if you do it gently and you're not pushing your body, you don't need a rest day because you've not pushed your body up to the point where it's having to regenerate, okay? In fact, the more you practice, the better, but you do need good quality sleep and rest in between to process, to improve. I've made some of my best breakthroughs in Tai Chi while asleep and while dreaming. I've had like insights and then gone back to the practice the next day and made a jump, because there's something in the unconscious mind's processing something that you can't quite figure out, and the unconscious mind goes, oh, try that, and then you try it the next day and it works. So again, yin and yang for everything, but for more gentle practice, or if you're doing some very gentle stretching or strength training, you're not pushing your body, you're not sore the next day, you don't need to rest. In fact, the more you practice, the better. When I say you don't need to rest, I mean you don't need to take a day off, I should say. So then the more you practice, the better. So for example, you can do something every day and you'll get better and better at it, like learning an instrument or learning a language. Whereas other types of practice, for example, very hard running, very hard stretching, you can overdo because you can burn out your body. So then you need to be working with someone that understands like the proper frequency, duration and intensity of the practice. Okay, so I don't want to complicate things. So what we were talking about last week was establishing a practice. So if it's a simple practice, like I want to do my 24 Tai Chi routine every day for the next 100 days, you're good to go. You are good to go. If it's something a little bit more difficult, like how can I really, really improve on a specific thing, then again, you need a coach or you need a program. There's plenty of programs online for strength, mobility, speed, endurance, and so on. So I would use those. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. There's been some really good, in the last few years, developments in sports science. When I was in China, everything was like repeat 1,000 times, do it every day. It was like very, very harsh in terms of the volume of the training. And I really, as I've got older and I've understood a little bit more about periodization and so on, I actually am more flexible now than I was in my 20s, which is bizarre. It shouldn't be the case. In other words, if I knew then what I knew now, I would be on a different level. But you know, again, you don't know what you don't know. So I'm trying to share what I've learned with you guys and give you the benefit of like not making some of the mistakes I made and trying to get a good result. So I think that's enough for the second video. Hopefully now you're establishing a practice, and what I can now suggest to you is to try to get some goals for your practice. So you have some specific aims. Write them down. I use Notes app on my phone. I can bring a note up and show every stretch I've done, every strength training I've done, my forms, like what I'm working on. I have very, very specific things. Every now and again though, just chill. I'm just going to have just a play today, just practice, just enjoy it. It's like if you're a guitarist and you're working on scales and one day I just want to noodle around and just play some music. Sometimes the body needs that chill, fun, relax. And again, sometimes you can even make a quantum jump. But remember, it takes all of that disciplined, deliberate practice to make a jump. So if you didn't do that other stuff, the skill doesn't come. So again, don't beat yourself up, but you always want to try to have a goal, but make the goal very achievable. Say 3 things, or if it's flexibility, just like 1 centimeter a month or something that's achievable. Don't say trying to get from complete beginner to a full split in 3 weeks or something. It's not going to happen, and then you feel like you've failed. So set yourself up for success. You have not failed if you've practiced, and if your goals are right and you're going in the right direction, any small increment is a success. So that's what I want for you. And the meaning of Kung Fu is like those small increments add up, and before you know it, you're doing stuff that you couldn't have imagined before, but you've done it in a way that's very systematized and the body's adapted. So I think I've waffled way too much for one video, and wish you all the best. Next video, I'll talk about how to actually structure, for example, if you have multiple goals, what a weekly practice schedule might look like. If you have any questions about this video or about the next one, anything you want to see covered, contact me in the comments here or by email, david@risingcrane.co.uk, anything you want to know, and I'll look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you in the next video.